Today on Drive Theory, we talk about ugly cars. What makes a car ugly? Why is a car ugly? Tony has figured out enough ugly cars that I didn't know exist that I now regret recording this podcast in its entirety. So please feel free to check out that and more today on Car Time.
Car time.
Back on the train.
All right.
Okay, here's the thing. Is the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile ugly?
No. Next question.
Why not?
Okay, what makes it? What would you say makes it ugly? It looks like a hot dog. Is a hot dog ugly? Hot dog's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
That's a fair point. I don't know. I'm okay. So like, would the car? So we've come up with a list, right? And we're both going to tell each other the list of ugliest cars that we come up with. So like, what's our criteria here? Is this like what cars that we think everyone would think is ugly, or is this just cars that we subjectively don't like, or cars that we think is like straight up bad visual design, or is it all of the above?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
I think it's all of the above. These are cars that I've seen them, and I think these are ugly cars.
Yeah, makes sense. Fair enough. We've been gone for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll probably be gone for a year before the next episode comes out too. So this is kind of the recording schedule you guys can our three followers
exactly
can expect.
Once per year,
right? Yeah. Have you driven any like interesting?
I've been preparing for about 15 minutes for this yearly annual recording.
That's yeah. Have you driven any like neat cars lately that's been interesting to you?
Was I still in the car business whenever we
you were.
recorded our last episode?
Yeah, you were working for Mercedes.
Yeah. I was driving a whole lot more interesting cars back then.
I
don't think so.
I think the most interesting car I've driven recently was my first time driving our friend's Civic Type R. I had every front wheel drive car that I had driven angrily has really been a car that isn't necessarily meant to be driven angrily, except with the exception of a Ford Focus ST and a Ford Fiesta ST. I've driven both of those, and it's been 2 or 3 years since I've driven any kind of Ford ST product. But the CTR was fantastic. I mean, that is like bar none the best front wheel drive sports sedan. That's one of the best sports sedans I've ever driven, period. Like one of my favorite that I've driven, period. Like,
yeah.
I think the fastest, technically, not necessarily my favorite, but the fastest one is still that M5 comp. It was like the F90 M5 comp. And man, that thing is just nuts how fast it was. But as far as what's important to me as an enthusiast is like it feeling fun and it not being way more car than I am driver. Man, I loved how that CTR drove. It was awesome. Like the weight distribution was great. Everything about it was just really eager and like, I don't know. It was good. It had automatic rev matching and you couldn't turn it off. I really disliked that. And then I didn't like the clutch. I feel like I kind of take issue with a lot of Honda clutches. Honestly, I find them to be pretty numb. But
yeah, it's also is it not a heavy clutch to you?
It was super light to me.
Okay, I driven a CTR that I thought had a heavy clutch, but I'm not entirely sure if it was modified or not.
It could have been. But you actually rode in that same CTR for an hour down and back on Monday. How was it to you as a passenger?
It was it was exactly what I thought it was. Honestly,
that's cool. Yeah,
I mean it was all highway, but it was it has an adaptive suspension, and I got to experience it both ways in R mode and I guess comfort mode, and
cool.
There was a pretty significant difference between them.
Yeah,
but in comfort mode or whatever that mode is called, it was a very agreeable experience on the highway. And even on some of these rougher roads around where I live.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a pretty awesome one car solution.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to buy a Civic Type R and have that as your only form of transportation and your fun car, I think it would work great both ways.
It's funny you mentioned that. I look back at some of our other podcast episodes just to kind of get a feel for, I don't know, what we were doing a year ago, and it we were talking a lot about like one car solution stuff, and we kept on landing on station wagons, and then when we intentionally ruled out station wagons because we already conceded that they were the correct answer for a one car solution,
And they are.
we they still are a year later. I think we conceded on performance sedan, which was like E63, CT5V Blackwing, Alfa Romeo Giulia Quad. Yeah, Alfa Romeo Giulia Quad. Sorry, I didn't realize it had as many names as you. And and then, but I don't think we mentioned CTR, which I hadn't driven a CTR up until this point, and my general exposure to front wheel drive vehicles have mainly been like either 30-year-old cars with minor sporting intention, early 2000s Mazdas that have been pushed beyond what they're supposed to be able to do. And so
Yeah.
my view of front wheel drive sports cars has been very outdated. And I would absolutely buy one though. Like as long as I could have as long as it wasn't my only car, if I had another rear wheel drive manual car, it doesn't even have to be manual. If I had another rear wheel drive fun car to take to a track or something like that, I would absolutely it would be perfectly amenable to me to daily drive a CTR. It'd be very fun. I really like it a lot. And it's cool. I went into it expecting that it was only going to be a hindrance of which drive wheels were driving the car, but it turns out that it's like it to me still is for my own personal wants and needs in a car. I still do prefer rear wheel drive, but in and of itself, it was a fun experience to see. Oh, this is what a front wheel drive sports car is like. This is a proper. I think it was also my first time, unless the Focus ST or the Fiesta ST, unless those had LSDs, it was my first time experiencing a true mechanical LSD in the front, and that was really strange. Like I haven't even experienced any all-wheel drive with a mechanical LSD in the front, and so because I complained about this in previous podcast episodes, but I really dislike it when you only have an electronic LSD, when it's only operated off of traction control and stuff like that, because when you turn all that off, it's still at the end of the day an open diff, or it's still going to be pulling power, or it's still going to be applying brakes to do what a mechanical LSD would just do. And the CTR just did LSD things, and that made it so much more fun. It made the torque steer a lot more manageable, and it was just cool. Braking, I still had trouble with braking, not because the brakes are bad, just because you're asking a lot of the front of the car when you're braking in a front wheel drive car.
Yeah, it's having to slow people don't realize this, but whenever you're slowing a car down, whenever you're braking, those front tires are doing the job of slowing down the car in a reasonable fashion. Like that is a stress that is not only on the brakes, but also on the front tires. And so whenever the front tires are braking, and obviously there's a lot of weight up there, and they're also in charge of having that LSD to transfer power, it makes the experience of braking in a front wheel drive car inherently different, regardless of what you do, than a rear wheel drive car.
Absolutely, and it affects what you do, what order of operations, what happens after you slow down too. Like how early you get on the power, in what way do you get on the power, and what angle is your steering wheel when you get on the power. Because
absolutely,
in my vehicles, if you get on the power and your steering wheel is not straight, you are not going to be going forwards. Or if you take your foot off of the throttle, because I now have vehicles that oversteer.
Right.
Speaking of vehicles, I don't want to like bog down the subject matter of the podcast too much, but both you and I have like new car solutions that I think is really interesting. So if I was to get a new truck today, and this isn't even me trying to pay you a compliment, this is me observing your truck and being in your truck. If I was to get a new truck today, my first thought would be Raptor, but then I would think, oh, what if I got something that was faster than Raptor and then got better gas mileage? so power boost. So you got a F-150.
Yeah, so in June I bought an F-150, a 2023 F-150 Power Boost, which more specifically is the hybrid version of Ford's most popular truck.
Right.
And really what it boils down to is it has the 3.5 twin turbo EcoBoost Ford engine, which is great by itself. And then you slap a battery and an electric motor in there, and you have a truck that does the basically mild hybrid thing better. It is a true hybrid, but it's not a plug-in. But it does the battery hybrid thing better than even the Toyota Tundra does,
Yeah.
because it gets better gas mileage. It has a little more power. It's a little faster. And Toyota has specifically said, whenever they came out with the iForce Max Tundra, that they weren't really seeking better gas mileage. It gets like 1 mile per gallon better.
Yeah, it's not much.
Yeah, it's like 1 mile per gallon better in the city, and the exact same on the highway. And the F-150 actually does get markedly better gas mileage than its non-hybrid EcoBoost counterpart, but it is also very fast. And being an electric vehicle, it has or not electric vehicle, but a partially electric vehicle, some may call a hybrid electric vehicle. It has I bought it because I drive a lot for work now, and I did that gas mileage was important to me, but I needed something that could tow my Z to the racetrack or whatever. And so I landed on a full-size truck, but I know I was going to need to drive it around a lot, so I wanted the gas mileage, but I'm also I just want to buy something that makes me smile when I put my foot down. And not that the regular EcoBoost wouldn't do that, but the Power Boost is just considerably faster. It's noticeably faster. It has way more torque. 573 pound-feet or something like that. It has it has in the upper 500s in pound-feet of torque. So it has a ton of low end. And I cannot remember the guys who did it, but they ran it against a similar generation Raptor, and they didn't even expect this, but the Power Boost absolutely kicked the Raptor's ass, which is hilarious. So I'm pretty pleased with it. It's a nice cruiser. It's good to drive around all day. It's good for road trips. I've never owned a pickup truck before, and I'm very, very pleased with it. I've towed with it probably about half a dozen times at this point. And it has not skipped a beat.
Is this also your first hybrid?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so you're doing first hybrid and first truck. It's funny you mentioned the Toyota IMAX Turbo Force with EQ technology or whatever they call it, but
yeah, exactly. The gears of Halo Theft Auto Toyota.
Well, the reason I find it interesting that you mentioned that is because you may already know this, so Ford developed that hybrid system sole, like they developed it, but they found that it was so similar in implementation to Toyota's RAV4 and Prius systems that they actually went to Toyota and said, "Hey, here's our homework. Can you make this better?" And they partnered with Toyota, and Toyota helped them optimize that system. And so it's remarkable to me that Toyota has their hands in a lot of baskets right now.
Yeah, that's true. I actually didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But
and everything you said about it performing better as far as fuel economy goes is true about it versus the Tundra. So I think that speaks on the drivetrain of the Power Boost and how good by itself the Power Boost. No, sorry, the EcoBoost. How good by itself the EcoBoost is, and then you put it with what is essentially a Toyota approved Ford hybrid system.
Hybrid system, yeah.
And so I really enjoyed learning about that, as well as the new CX-5, either CX-5 or CX-9 is going to be sharing the RAV4's hybrid drivetrain in the next few years. I actually don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I didn't sign anything for it, so we're good. Yeah, and so that's going to be really interesting, as well as Toyota on one of their vehicles is going to get Soul Red Metallic or Soul Crystal Red.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Soul Crystal Red?
Yeah. I want to say it's going to be on... I want to say it's on something boring. I want to say it's like on a Corolla Cross or something like that it's going to be going on to. But
interesting.
But I'm still... like Soul Crystal Red.
So Toyota said, we give you battery technology that took tens of millions of dollars of R&D, and we get your most popular color.
Apple cider red. No, Soul Crystal Fire of the world, or I think every single car looks so ridiculously good with that
I can't think of a single car I wouldn't want in Soul Crystal Red.
Yeah. But anyway,
Unfortunately, it wouldn't save most of the cars on this list, or at least on my list.
actually, I think it would save a few of the cars on mine, to be honest. Okay, so this list that we compiled, as you probably, you the viewer, as you or listener, probably have seen or heard or read from the title, is Tony and I we were awoken back into podcast land because we unfortunately saw the new Kia Tasman. And the Kia Tasman is a pickup truck that is not coming to the U.S. market. It's going to be starting in Australia, I believe, and going elsewhere from there. And the interior, to its credit, is good because you can't see as much of the outside of the vehicle from the inside. The problem is that the outside is
the biggest pro of buying the car is that you don't have to look at
yeah.
it. You can be inside of it and not have to look at it.
So I don't know about Tony's list. I would imagine it's the same thing, but the one thing to note about my list is that some of these vehicles are ugly as a result of the design philosophy being function over form, whereas the Kia Tasman, I truly believe that is just gratuitously ugly. Like there are design like cues and things that they did that I truly cannot comprehend why they would do that other than just styling it as loud as possible, which is congruent with some of Kia and Hyundai's other styling. Some might call it faux pas, some might call it a good thing, but that's kind of where we're at with it right now.
There have been some bold moves as of recently in the Korean lineup, but I think some of it works, and I think some of it is controversial.
Mhm.
But I don't hate any of it, and I appreciate that. Like we are moving away from everything just has to be an angry looking car.
Yeah, I like that. I like that too. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
But and we can absolutely start with this Kia pickup truck thing, the Tasman or the Tasman.
I just figured that would be a good preliminary.
Absolutely, it really looks like, to me, someone tried to implement into a pickup truck as many unpleasing design elements as possible. And I am no designer. I'm going to try to describe it in a way that makes sense, and also that can conjure up the correct thoughts to try to describe how this thing is actually offensive to the eye.
Yeah.
Because it truly is. It truly is a very interesting study of I don't know if human ingenuity is the right term to use, but the human need to for body lines to resolve, and for things to make sense, and for cars to have faces, and
pattern recognition,
all that stuff.
I really tried to think critically about why I thought some things about this vehicle, and I tried to do that along because I was behind one of the new Hyundai Santa Fe's, and I don't like the way that those vehicles look. However, I do concede that probably in 20 or 30 years from now, I probably will like the way they look because they look different. And I tried to extend that same grace to the Tasman, and I just can't do it. However,
nope, it's not happening.
Yeah, however, I do like the way the single cab looks, and I got to thinking about that, and I'm not even trying to be funny, but I think I like the way the single cab looks better is because there's less room for it to have some of the design language that the crew cab has.
There's just you like it better because there's less of
right?
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, less is more, and in this case, less is also less.
Yeah, my biggest thing about this Tasman is that it is a proven thing that we see faces in cars, and how attractive that face is. It has a huge impact on whether we find the car itself attractive. And this just does not have an attractive face. It's just a wide bulbous. It kind of looks like a whale.
Like a balloon.
Well, really, the issue is that it doesn't really look like anything. It doesn't really look like it has a face. And something about like the grill having the exact same height all the way across as the headlights do. The like these fender flares, they don't resolve anywhere. They just kind of look like they're stuck on. Yeah. It's not a particularly flowing design. The hood is very long, but also the bed, at least in the ones I'm looking at, is also very long. So it looks
yeah,
like, and if you just focus on the cab, it actually looks pretty
yeah,
normal.
yeah,
Um,
like a Nissan
and
Frontier
then
or
you open up toward the hood and toward the bed, and you realize both just keep going. So it looks like a cab stuck in this never ending
plank.
line,
Yeah.
or this other never ending body line that goes all the way across from the back. It looks like it's 30 feet long, and I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be smaller than a full size American pickup truck, but it's slightly larger than a worldwide market Ford Ranger. And another thing too is that not only you can tell that they're trying to hide some of the size too, because if you look at it on all of the trim levels, there's this black piece of plastic that goes at the bottom of the doors, not just the door sills at the bottom, but on the bottom part of the door and on the bottom part of the bed. It's like they're trying. It's the same thing. Like, so the Mustang Mach-E, for example, it has a lot of black at the top of the roof near the back, and that's to make it look like it has that fastback look without sacrificing the headroom for the rear seats. And you can kind of see that the Tasman is doing that to try to hide some of the visual mass that it has, but on the bottom of the truck to make it look higher off of the ground than it is. And another thing too, if you look at the headlights, like I think you raised a great point of that it doesn't have a face, except for the headlights make it look like some kind of strange animal and not a predator. Like, and not that it has to be angry, but
No, not a
it gives
predator.
me like eyes on the side, made to hide, energy. Because it reminds me.
It
It's like
does.
the I think that a Nissan Juke has a more successful face with protruding with the same flavor of protruding headlights as the Tasman does, because the headlight shape of the housing flows with the car moving forwards, whereas the Tasman does not. And so it's almost like unsettling to look at it dead on. When you're looking at it dead on, it's like you're making or you're trying to make eye contact with a pug or a carp or something.
Yeah, I actually feel bad for it. It looks like it does have, like, in classic pug fashion, it looks like it's having trouble breathing. It doesn't look like it has a very comfortable life. It looks like as it gets older, it's going to start having a lot of health issues.
Someone bred the snout out of it.
Someone bred the snot out of it. It doesn't look great. So
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes. I'd love to see one in person, but it's
Yeah.
probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it'll probably be next
Um,
time we're overseas or something like that is when we'll see one.
I, I appreciate Kia Hyundai for making some design leaps recently.
I agree.
This one's not working for me. The Santa Fe I actually don't think looks too bad. I
Uh,
think the back of it looks pretty. I think the back of it looks unfinished, and there was definitely some design implementation they could have done back there to make it a little more interesting. But it's not egregious and it's not offensive or anything. But this is both of those
Yes.
things.
So it's
Um,
interesting that you mentioned that. I want to have one last note about Kia and Hyundai. This is a nitpicky thing, but it's something I can't put out of my mind nonetheless. And I love and have loved most of Hyundai and Kia's taillight designs from the past 10 years. The problem is they put all of this effort into their taillight designs and they make none of it sequential. And then they put the blinker in a completely separate housing that's like way at the bottom of the bumper or something like that. So it's like,
yeah,
if,
I'm on your side
yeah,
with that.
like if
I
even,
read about a guy who had that, like, level of autism where he loves, or the type of autism, like he really likes sequential taillights
yeah,
and
yeah.
or sequential blinkers,
Mhm.
and I can only imagine. And this was 10 years ago or more when I read this guy's basically account of how, like, of his favorite blinkers and
Yeah.
taillights, and I can only imagine his rage whenever he sees things that it's like it's right there. Like, this makes sense. And I don't know if there's any code things or any laws recently that require or that keep you from doing that, but I'm pretty sure not, because I think a lot of recent Audis have really cool sequential
Oh
blinkers
my
as well.
gosh, Audi is so good with their taillights, dude. Another thing too is like, um, Hyundai and Kia's daytime running lights and headlights, them kind of blurring the line between. So like, if you look at a new Santa Cruz, and then I think the outgoing generation of the Santa Fe, not the current one that looks kind of Previa-ish, but the old one that was the same basic front end as a Santa Cruz. If you count, it has 10 headlights, but they also serve as DRL. So it's like it has literally 10 bars on the front of the car facing forward. But
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're
it
talking about. And
actually,
it's pretty sweet. I
yeah,
actually like that a
it
lot.
works. Yeah. But they had the opportunity to make like a really cool turn signal with all of those lights. And I think they just kind of deferred to, uh, cost cutting. to put heavily. But
I have no idea, and I have no idea what you're talking about by saying the new Santa Fe looks Previa-ish,
it's
but
the
I'm not here to argue with you.
okay. That's fair. Yeah, we'll have room to talk about the Previa in a bit. But it's funny. Speaking of, what is your first like ugly car on your list?
First ugly car on my list. I have a couple of interesting ones, but I think I'll start. I think I'll start pretty easy. I'm going to start with the Fiat Multipla,
Yeah,
and
classic.
of course, you know what that looks like. I'm going to send it into our little chat here just so you can have a visual reference.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm also going to
but
cross it off on my list too. I think it's on every like automotive list, but it is for good reason.
absolutely. Oh, it's not sending, but that's fine. You know what the Multipla looks
Yeah.
like. The Multipla is also one of those cars where I almost feel like it was designed wrong on purpose.
Yeah.
It
I agree.
has two sets of body lines. It looks like it. I mean, it looks like one car chopped in half, another car chopped in half, of two completely different design languages, and then you stuck them together or something.
Yeah.
I'll never understand what those upper fog lights are for, toward the bottom of the windshield.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's like a layered cake where you have the windshield, you have that body line, you have that finish, almost like a first, I don't know, front of the car, and
Yeah.
then the hood starts,
Yeah.
and then it comes out.
It's like if they put
It
if they put a frunk on it, they could put a frunk on the upper hood and then put another one on the lower hood if there wasn't an engine there.
yes, exactly.
Okay, I have a title of a book that I can say that I think really well describes the Fiat Multipla.
What's that?
Cars and Trucks and Things That Go by Richard Scarry is, I think.
It is all those
It
things.
it would feel very at home in that book, in any Richard Scarry book. Like it is the greenhouse, also known as like just like the windows of the vehicle, it protrudes in a way that is completely divorced from the rest of the design language of the entire car. Like and it is, from the pictures that I've seen of the interior of this vehicle, it is absolutely cavernous on the inside. Like it is functionally, I'm sure it's a very pleasant, very pleasant cabin to ride in, just because of the sheer amount of space that you have, because you could probably stand up in the thing if you wanted to. But
Maybe. I think they're quite small.
really, I think of it in the same way, and I don't know, I've never seen a Fiat Multiple in person, but I would imagine it's like, Grumman LLB mail truck. They look small from far away, but when you actually get to it, you realize you can almost stand up in the back of it. And so
That's fair. I think that's a fair comparison.
I don't know, again, because I've never seen one, but I would imagine, just looking at it, I would hope that if they design it that way, it's at least quite large in there. And I don't know if it seats 5 or if it seats 7, or I don't know. I just got a message from you. What?
Yes, don't. That's the next one I'm going to talk about.
Okay, I won't look at it yet. I won't look at it then.
Yeah. Go ahead and speak on your first pick.
Okay, so
or possibly second pick.
This one, I wanted this one to be first, and it's technically like a couple of cars, but it's really like a segment. And it's I touched on this a moment ago, where some vehicles are ugly, quote unquote, as a result of their design being placed second to the function. So I put the Honda Ridgeline, and I think the first generation looked better than the second generation. And I actually had a chance about 4 or 5 days ago to really spend a lot of time in a brand new one up close, and I think the features are so freaking cool. Like you can set 2 5-gallon buckets on the inside of a cooler inside the bed, and it is so deep, and it's a locking cooler. It locks like a trunk latch, and then it has a drain plug in the bottom. And then like there's so many different like small ergonomic features that just make so much sense. Like I think it is far and away the most ergonomic and intelligently designed pickup truck on the market because of the features that it has. But then you look at it and it's just so uninspired, and it's so like, I don't know. I have a fairly antiquated idea of what a pickup truck should look like, because I'm an old school guy. I like old school looking trucks, and so I liked the first Ridgeline a bit better because it had more of a brawny, almost masculine look to it. It looked like a truck. It looked like it was more capable than it maybe was. But the second gen, I mean, it just looks like a Pathfinder with the tail. Like it just, you know, and I understand that there is just going to be a cost of doing business as far as like when you design something that is in first place essentially a Ute, so something like a Ranchero or something like a Santa Cruz or like a Ford Falcon Ute, or a Holden or something like that. You know, it's just going to look kind of weird, but um, I think if it looked a bit more traditional, almost, that I think to the informed buyer, it would probably be one of the better selling pickup trucks on the market, just because it is just so good, but it's so ugly. Mm.
I I actually don't hate how the first generation Ridgeline
Fair,
looks.
yeah. I think
I
it's my
don't
favorite
hate
one.
it.
It's my favorite
I,
Ridgeline.
I but the most recent generation, I feel like, looks like a Honda Odyssey went and worked out for a little while.
But yeah, but it
Um,
only did chest days.
in a not an attractive way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It did chest days by itself for 2 months, and then it bought shirts 2 sizes smaller than what it had. Like,
It's like if Anya Taylor Joy got like really, really, really jacked, and you're like, huh, definitely not what I think. What I imagine when I think of Anya Taylor Joy.
yeah, I think that's fair. And like, I I tried to almost talk both out of both sides of my mouth when I talk about it, and like kind of compliment it at the same time, because I feel the same way about, frankly, like most minivans or cargo vans, for example. Like a Ford Transit, I think is fairly unattractive, but how much can you really blame it because of what it's of the space that it's working with? You know, the same.
I mean, honestly, before the Santa Cruz and the Maverick came out, I honestly don't think I can't think of what truck buy or a what a burgeoning truck buyer would want to buy if they just wanted something that kind of drove like a
Yeah,
minivan, and they needed a bed.
it's interesting. I hadn't thought about the Maverick at all in this conversation, and I think it's necessary to. I think you bring up a good point, because the Maverick is an example of a really fantastic looking Ute. You know, a really fantastic looking car based item, and so like for the Maverick to be. Oh, hey, Laurel. Oh,
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Sorry if I'm interrupting.
you're good. Um, so I think for the Maverick to be such a traditionally good looking car, then
Go
if
ahead.
the Ridgeline looked like a Maverick, it would be a fantastic vehicle. Or like,
Yeah, I agree. I think the Maverick is exactly what it should be. It's a pretty simple design. It's not like in your face. It's not angry. It doesn't really look like anything else in Ford's lineup. Well, it didn't. It looks actually very similar now to the Ranger, but that's not an issue
yeah,
at all. The Ranger being another truck.
yeah,
Um,
another Ford truck at that.
yes, another Ford truck.
Yeah,
It doesn't look like a some nebulous Ford minivan that they unfortunately don't make anymore. But it doesn't try to look overly manly. It's a small truck. It looks like a small truck,
yeah,
and it's a completely inoffensive design. I think it looks pretty good. And if you, I mean, this is just the car enthusiast in me talking, but if you lowered it and um did it up a little bit, it can look very, very cool and aggressive without
yeah,
needing angry headlights or anything like that.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's also interesting that you noted that the it being a small segment of like Honda Ridgeline that it existed in, and I think the context of some of these vehicles looking particularly like wacky or just downright ugly, I think is probably some of it. At least one on my list is, which we'll touch on later, is due in part to the segment being very nebulous and brand new at the time, and so no one really knew what they wanted it to look like, and they kind of cashed in on buyers wanting something that looked futuristic or wanting something retro futuristic. So this is how you get some strange vehicles like the SSR or the HHR or the what's the Chrysler version that the same dude designed both of them, PT Cruiser. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, but anyways, what is the next one on your list?
The next one on my list is see if that image will pop up for you.
Okay, is this the one you sent at 8:18?
Yes.
Oh my god!
So that is the SsangYong Rodius. SsangYong is another South Korean car manufacturer.
What?
They don't, obviously not in the U.S. market.
This is so bad.
It's pretty bad, right? It looks like if Chrysler
It looks like Chrysler, yeah.
It looks a little bit like a Chrysler,
like
right?
Chrysler and Honda, or Chrysler and Pontiac Aztec in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So
Nice.
the biggest thing about this car is the proportions.
Yeah.
The proportions are insane.
Mhm.
The headlights are like
Massive.
weirdly enormous.
Yeah.
The grill is like a really weird medium
Yeah.
size. I feel like I don't know, it's hard to explain. To me, it's too medium.
Yeah.
Um and then of course as you go back it doesn't get any better. Especially toward the rear there, it just is very Aztec-y.
Yeah, it is.
Even that C pillar, or really that D pillar, I don't even really know what they call that thing. The way that
Yeah.
it fast backs down suggests a very ugly humpback, and then you just get the roof line continuing on and making a big square back instead, which somehow makes it
Okay,
worse.
yeah,
So it's just bad all
that
around.
car is truly
There isn't
rad.
even really much you could do to save it other than to completely change all of the there is a normal car in there
Yeah.
somewhere, but it's like you just selected everything in Photoshop, every specific element, and then made everything too big or small.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like if AI made a car, because it looks like this was done with
Yes.
no congruent design language. Another thing too is like you talk about the scale, and to expound on that a little bit, look at how small the wheel wells and the wheels are on that car. Like,
Yes, that's one of the things I was thinking about was too
yeah,
small. Was that it just those look the wheels and wheel well just look too small for the car.
yeah, absolutely. And then the rake on the windshield is just so aggressive for what.
It's weirdly aggressive,
Yeah, like
right?
look at it look at the car next to it. It's like the same angle of rake on that what looks like a two-door coupe or two-door hardtop convertible, but it is
Right.
on this vehicle that it starts out in a slope and it ends in a box. So
Right.
it's, what
Yeah,
is
I don't
that,
know what
dude?
this is one of those cars where it's like mostly a normal car, but there were just like three or four too few meetings figuring out the actual design of it. And
This isn't a car that you would buy.
those headlights are really throwing me off. It's like an
Yeah,
anime. Like it's like it's like if a car was an anime character, like the eyes are too big.
this is a car. This is a hand-me-down car from the factory. Like I don't I don't know if anyone would choose to drive it. Okay. Oh, actually, you know what? Speaking of that, you know what this reminds me of, Tony? This reminds me of your old Buick Rendezvous.
It's like a very unfortunate accident happened to a Buick Rendezvous, and some kid rebuilt it in his garage.
Yeah, this is a two-frame Rendezvous.
Exactly.
Yeah, on reps.
Yeah, I can't even figure out what shape that whole front clip is.
I don't know,
I
man.
I can't figure out where it starts to become the front of the car. It stops being the hood and starts to become the front of the car. It's just it's I just feel like it's different every time I look at it.
Yeah,
Almost, you know what I mean?
yeah. It's the and then the headlights the headlights having four protrusions within the housing. It reminds me of that villain from Monsters Inc. a little bit, like
Yes.
that spider, his eyes or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my god.
but
All right, what is your next one?
okay. So my next one, um, I I have this on here, but I have to come clean and say full disclosure. I love the way that this car looks. I think it is
Oh,
one of
jeez.
my favorite cars just of all time. And I'm okay with saying that I would sell it all to try to get one, and that would be in early or late '80s, early '90s Aston Martin Lagonda. Um, I
You have such a weird obsession with the Lagonda.
it's such a so it's the only car, it's the only road car that I know of. There might be another one. I have a hard time finding information on this, but it's the only production car that I know of that has inboard brakes and inboard disc brakes. Like the disc brakes are literally
I do believe some Jaguars of similar vintage had inboard disc
that,
brakes. You're talking about
that
like
would make sense.
they're
British car,
the brakes were actually right next to the diff
right?
instead of in the wheel
Yeah,
wells, right?
yeah. But the thing about it, the one thing that I love about that car is that not only a lot of these cars are pretty horrendous or ugly or just very from a design language loud on the outside, but are fairly mundane or quirky at worst on the inside. The Lagonda only becomes more unhinged as you get inside the car because you have switches and you don't the instrument cluster isn't backlit on the car like every other car ever. It
Oh,
is
I didn't know
it
that.
has like porch lights in the top of the instrument cluster that shine onto the actual
Like
thing.
little
Yeah, and
spotlights.
so it just
That's insane.
completely foregoes what cars have been doing. If this let's say this is a 1991 model year, cars have been instrument clusters have been backlit for like what 40 years at that point, but they were just like, no, I'm gonna put a minivan style, interior dome light in the top of it, and it's just gonna shine light onto the instrument cluster.
That's hilarious. I wonder if that was seen as fancy at the time or something.
I don't
You
know, man.
know, it's like having an analog, like one of the analog
Yep.
watches that
Uh-huh.
Mercedes only very recently stopped putting in their cars.
Another.
It's like here's
Yeah.
an old-fashioned way of telling time, even though digital clocks have existed for 60
Okay, I
years.
do kind of love the analog clock though, but it's interesting that you mentioned that.
I mean, I like it too,
Yeah,
but it's I think it's a similar thought process with
just like
a much stupider, uh, like end.
yeah,
You know what I
you're
mean?
selling perceived class. You're selling a perceived baroque
You're selling
feature of a
perceived
car.
class, maybe, and I couldn't tell you if that's why they did that, but
But like another thing
yeah,
too.
no, this is almost an attractive car to me, but it looks like it was designed in one of those like original trilogy Star Wars
Yep.
computers with the green grids and stuff.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a it's a like a Corella Deville style car.
it is a very Cruella de Vil style car. This thing needs to be much
Yeah.
longer. It looks like it looks like it. It looks a little bit too long. I'll tell you that much. And
Okay. Okay.
the
When you look at the length of it, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just think this is important context. When you look at the length of it, look at how short the back doors are in comparison to the front door.
yeah, so then the back doors are very short, and it's an Aston Martin. It's made to be driven, not be ridden in. It's
Right.
not like an S class.
Mhm.
And they did do a shooting brake or a wagon of some sort for this thing, and
I didn't know
the, it looks like it's too much.
that.
It looks like the back is like sloughing off of the car, like it's about to fall off.
That's so nuts, man. Oh, another interesting quirk about this car is that it has rear AC, but the AC blows on the back of your neck. Like the AC is in the deck lid, and where the
Interesting. It's like air scarf, but back, but the other way
right,
around.
yeah, that's all you get. Like that's the only airflow you get
That's
from the back.
interesting.
But
Yeah, these are very interesting cars. I can't imagine how they didn't catch on.
yeah, I think it is probably one of the more. I think if you want to most effectively set your money on fire and get a car that is um, functionally impossible to repair by yourself, I think a Lagonda is the car for you. Like I think that would be fantastic. But I'm gonna be honest, man. It and a DeLorean, I really want one of those, vehicles. Even though they're a mechanical disaster. Like it's a DeLorean. It's it's an Ireland made car, so it's basically it's an Ireland made car, which I don't think any other cars were made in Ireland, and it was with a French drivetrain, and then it was what 8 or 9 years delayed before it even came out, and it was twice as expensive, 3 times as expensive what it was supposed to be, and so now 40 years from removed, it's the same thing of like people don't LS swap their RX-7s to make it fast. They LS swap their RX-7s to make it reliable, and
You're
yeah,
reliable.
and I think it probably would be the best. The same thing with a Lagonda or a DeLorean or something like that. But anyways, yeah, I personally love the way that car looks, but I do have the cognizance to recognize that it is probably one of the uglier vehicles. Like I think if it was more normal looking, or if it just looked like a standard S class of the time or standard Jaguar of the time, it probably wouldn't even be on my radar because it's just the amount of just
Yeah, it's just not ugly enough to be quirky and desirable, but it is also just objectively not super attractive,
yeah, yeah.
especially for an Aston Martin.
And that's another thing is like at the time they came out with that car, they wanted a 4-door car to boost sales, and that was the most contemporary thing that they came up with. And
Exactly.
like, that's
It's aggressively 80s. I'll tell you that
that's
much.
true. Yeah,
It's almost a caricature of the
you're
80s.
right. Yeah, and
Back to AI. It's like asking AI to make an 80s sedan,
yeah, absolutely.
and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, man. All right, what do you have for me?
All right, this next one is pretty good. Subaru Tribeca, first generation Subaru Tribeca.
Where are you finding this stuff? Okay, I'm about
Am
to.
I finding? These things are all over the place.
These?
We got Subaru Tribecas.
What? That's so
Yeah.
weird. It looks like a Nissan.
It looks to me, what it looks like is if a Porsche and an Alfa Romeo and a Maserati all had some horrifically genetically deficient child.
They wanted if those three companies wanted to make a vehicle that someone with a credit score lower than the PSI on the tires could afford. It looks like this is what they would do. This is crazy. I
Exactly.
can see how you get the Alfa Romeo with the grill. The grill is
Yeah.
the grill is actually kind of like early 2000s Impreza almost to me. So like that kind of does
It
carry
is.
on.
No, that's why. I mean, it's a Subaru. It is using some semblance of a design language.
Let me just look up.
From back in that time period. But yeah, no, it is obviously not successful
That's so crazy. And they sold them
in this
here.
particular case. Yes.
Also, I just want to say this is a Tribeca. This is the model of the car.
Yes.
That is a generous name for that vehicle. They're like, oh yeah, this to me does not. If you asked me what neighborhood of New York this car was, I would not have chosen Tribeca. That's nuts to me, man. And then the beige isn't helping it out, but that makes me think. What is this, like a 2004, 2000, like early 2000s model vehicle?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. I just know it's the first generation of it.
There's more than one generation. Did the next generation?
Yeah, no, they got better. It got more boring looking.
Okay, that's probably good for their.
Yeah, no, the facelift is aggressively boring. Which I'm sure did wonders for their sales because this is horrific.
I honestly, I will say that it looks fairly contemporary from the sides and the back. But it's mainly the front and then the size of the mirrors that make it so strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like those mirrors are very very. They have a lot of verticality in those mirrors, which is
they do. They're large and very shallow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good point. It doesn't have a lot of contour to it.
But my animosity toward this vehicle is all about that front clip, all about those headlights and that fascia.
Yeah,
because that grill is not doing it for me.
No.
Or its weird little side grills, obviously. Those Porsche wannabe headlights are not doing it for me.
Well, you know what's funny is that it's like it is kind of knockoff Cayenne, but
it's very knockoff Cayenne to me.
You look at crossovers of today, and it's actually kind of reversed the locations. Like they have the DRLs up high where those headlights are, and then they have the actual headlights down low near the front.
Yeah,
so it's like I noticed with like the Chevy Blazers and Kia, Nissan, eggs, they all they're starting to proliferate where the headlights are way down low, which I kind of like. I think functionally, I think that's a good thing, but it's interesting that something like this is just straight up flip flopped,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nuts. Wow, I did not know that vehicle existed. Like if I saw something like that, I would have no idea what it was.
They're not particularly common, mm-hmm. But I see them plenty of time. Like I have seen this car here in town, plenty of times.
Huh.
And it was they were powered by a cool engine at the time. It was one of Subaru's flat sixes, a 3.6.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like it was boring or super slow or anything. It made like 250 horsepower, which at the time was pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's not the same. It's not the same flat six that was in the SVX.
Okay.
But
I was thinking
it would have been cool if the SVX got this one.
Yeah.
It was a 3.3 in the SVX.
Okay, that makes sense. So there's a 3.5 versus a 3.3. 3.6. I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed that 10th.
Feel it.
Okay. Well, this will probably be the last time I ever think about that car. So moving on from that, another one that I've got. This one, these cars are. I have 4 different cars, but they all look indistinguishable enough to me that I just looped them into the same answer. I don't know if that's like cheating or whatever, but this is from an era when I think it was just a sad time to be a car enthusiast. Like I think that I think that also like extended to the design language of the era. And I'm talking about the 70s and the malaise era, where like
yeah, of course.
So the Chevy Chevette, the Ford Pinto, the AMC Matador, and the Mustang 2. All of those, like I would have to do a real hard double take to be able to distinguish, at like 10 feet to be able to tell you which one was which without looking at badging and stuff like that.
Well, I can tell you the difference between a Chevette and a Mustang 2 is the Mustang 2 is about the size of a La Quinta Motel, and a Chevette is about the size of
Dude, I have a family member that used to drive a Chevette, and the stories that they would tell me about that car, it was like genuinely unsafe. Like it would not go up some hills. Like it wouldn't. Like I saw on the internet somewhere. I don't remember exactly where, but I saw that I saw that it broke someone's like dyno record for lowest dyno car. I think it was like 36 wheel horsepower is how much it had.
And I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but Regular Car Reviews is a fantastic video on the Chevette, and he references a dyno day where it made, I think it was 26 or 27 horsepower.
Oh my god, that is like, so I don't know if you saw the recent Haggerty Jason Camisa video with the new Volkswagen ID Buzz, but they drag raced I won't spoil the results, but they drag raced a original Volkswagen bus with someone on a bicycle, and like, again, I won't like spoil it, but the fact that they found those things were close, competitive with each other speaks volumes to where it makes,
that's amazing. I gotta check that video, but that's hilarious. But yeah, no, that was definitely a very sad time visually and performatively to be a car enthusiast. Can't imagine what would happen if that situation was.
Yeah, I like to think that those were like the Mike Schul. If we have any Alabama fans listening, we probably don't. But never mind. You go ahead.
Roll Tide. All right. My next one is is also a Subaru. It's actually SVX adjacent. Okay. Speaking of the SVX, this is the Subaru Amadeus. It was like a shooting brake version of the SVX.
You're making this up. This is not a real car.
It was a concept car. Okay. They did not come out. I don't think they actually put this bad boy in production. But
I don't hate it.
I think it was not necessary to turn this into a wagon, and I would say that about very, very few cars.
I guess that does beg the question of why. Like, okay, I like that it's a little bit more melted bar soapy than the SVX was, especially with the body panels. Like, it seems like, but what confuses me is that you see that strip of tan along the bottom of the entire car, how it like swoops up and it comes onto the roof. Like,
yeah, that's insane. It's insane because, and I'll tell you why it's insane, is that, I mean, I get it. It almost does that Veyron thing, right? Where it's
it does do the Veyron. Yeah,
it does. It does the Veyron thing, except it's kind of scaled up, except that it's completely interrupted by the taillight. So
they could have put they could put like a 20 millimeter line of additional, made it 20 millimeters thicker so that it went around the taillight instead of just to the taillight. And
yeah, this two-tone choice was definitely not great. I think it would look a little bit better if the trunk wasn't also blue in that one portion. If they kept that silver beige color. But I also just hate the general shape of the car. It kind of looks like
like it kind of looks like a jelly bean, but you squeeze it too hard when you're picking it up out of the bag.
So it's like a little misformed, a little bit long. I also never been a fan of the smaller windows within the windows that the SVX did, and the fact that it's in a much larger form factor here is it makes it.
They don't have to do that anymore.
No, I mean, I don't think they have to do that. So I mean, I would love to understand the reasoning of doing that.
It had to be structural rigidity. Like it had to be like they probably weren't able to make a window that was rigid enough to be able, or robust enough to be able to handle torsion, to be able to torsionally handle being that big on something like that. Like that would be my guess. I don't know, but I know on my van it has a door on one side because they say because of safety, but I think it really because I think the chassis has so little torsional rigidity that if they did put a double door on it, they probably would just like crinkle, like a can of Coke. And
Right.
so I think the smaller windows maybe was just a sign of the times with trying to make a really curved piece of glass they before doors were I don't know. I don't really know what I'm talking about there, but I think it has something to do with structural rigidity. Is the reasoning why there were smaller windows like that. Thinking of like the AutoZam AZ1 or the Subaru SVX or there's another example I just can't think of it right now. But anyways,
Okay.
very nice. That is a fantastic. I don't think have there been any examples that you've said so far that I've known or have even heard of before?
I'm kind of shocked that you didn't know what the Tribeca was, because I mean, that's a car that's here. But
Yeah,
no, I don't
I
think
wish
so.
that I could go back to a time where I still didn't know what a Tribeca was.
All right,
Okay,
what you got?
this one's kind of a boring one, but the first generation Nissan Armada and QX56s, I think those are probably the worst SUVs that I see on the road now. Like it's got such a stupid hump to it, and I just
There is, I mean, those cars. Every time Laurel and I pass one, it's like,
yeah,
who buys this? It's so
yeah.
huge, it's so horrifically bulky. It's not big enough inside to warrant looking that big and bulky. They drive, at least the Nissan ones, they drive like absolute freaking waterbed tanks. I haven't driven a very
Okay, I was
recent
about to
one.
ask. That's really interesting. I've never
Um,
driven a first gen Armada, so I was curious about like I was more like morbidly curious about how it
but
drives.
yeah, they're I mean, they're hilarious. They
Hmm.
look hilarious. Uh, it's they're I almost, especially the Infinities, the QX56 and the
Hmm.
QX80. They almost look PT
Yeah, I
Cruiser-ish up
agree.
front. They have a lot going on up there, but there's those interesting bulges that they seem to just be tacking on up there. It almost looks like they have warts that headlights are
Yeah.
growing
Uh
out
huh.
of. That was a great pick because those are horrifically ugly cars. And honestly, like, I have driven a recent
Hmm.
QX80, a
Okay.
21 model, and it is a very decent
Hmm.
luxury SUV. Very decent.
Yeah.
Like, it's not great. Very decent. I get a lot of commercials right now for on
Hmm.
Discovery Plus for the current QX80, like the
Yeah.
brand new generation, has a lot of cool features. It looks much better. They kind of
I
smoothed
think
out
that's
the
been true
front.
for every generation.
Um,
They've increased. I mean,
they've made it a
you
little bit
can't get
more
lower than the
sensible.
floor, so
Uh,
it's better every time.
but the 21 model definitely drove
Yeah.
decently, but the looks of that model and everything that came before it would keep me from
Fair.
buying it.
Yeah. Okay. I have I have one more. Can I go? Do you want to say yours first and then I'll say mine? Because I think mine's kind of a hot take. Actually, I think it's a big hot take.
Go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
think the Karmann Ghia is the ugliest car. I think it is the top of my list. When I think of an ugly car, I cannot think of an uglier car than a Karmann Ghia. I do not understand what people like about those cars, man. Like it looks like
I think the Karmann Ghia is quirky ugly, and I
okay.
love it for
I
it.
think it's fair.
I don't think it's an objectively attractive car, but I think it's
I
cool
just
looking.
like okay, I don't like the way the E types look either, but I see why people do. But when I look at a Karmann Ghia, I just like, it looks like if a catfish had a mustache, and like it just, but it's just so bad. Like I don't. But every single person that I have mentioned this notion to has been like, what do you mean? Like Karmann Ghia is like iconic.
That's so funny. I can understand why you would find it ugly, but I love it, and I think like I said, I think it's
Okay.
quirky ugly. Um, I think it's I think it may be the same. I think people think it's cute. I think it's the same reason people like maybe French bulldogs and
Okay.
pugs and
Fair.
stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe. Uh, but I would
Really.
own one. There's one that there's a guy who owns one down the road from me, and I love looking at it every time I pass it.
That's so interesting. Huh. Yeah. Huh. What's your? I think we got time for maybe one or two more.
Okay. Well, if we got time for two more, I will. Let me just roll two in a row.
Please
Then
do.
I think that you know this one, but I think one of the biggest flops in automotive design history is a first gen Plymouth Neon. And as the owner of a second gen Dodge Neon, because the Plymouth Neon also had a facelift, and this is pre facelift. This is like a 1995.
I can't hate on this car, man. I really
there
like
was this thing should not have rolled off like it did. There was definitely some more they could have done to make this less of a horrific car. Also, the choice to have some of them just have like a primer black front bumper is hilarious. So that was kind of a thing in the 90s. I don't know why.
I don't know, man. It's maybe it's the same thing with like inverse, but like I really like it. I think the only thing it needs is pop up headlights. You know, like that would make it even. I think it's funny. Like I think it's very like.
It's funny looking. That's my thing too. I think it's funny looking. I don't think it's like quirky. I think it's just funny looking in a bad way. I don't know. Let me put it this way: all of the cars I've sent so far, including this one, I don't know why you would walk to a car dealership and see it and go, "This is what I want."
Yeah, that's actually an excellent point because I'm wholly removed from when these cars first came out. We weren't alive when these cars came out.
No, we weren't alive when these cars came out, but I can definitely think of a couple of compact cars at the time that I would rather buy than this.
Plymouth a Sentra, for example.
A Sentra or a Civic. And this was made specifically to compete with the Sentra and the Civic with the Japanese compact cars. But honestly, when you're designing that, the only reason to buy this is because it's not an import. It's an American car. And I think that's why we see so many Sentras and Civics in the 90s. And only the diehard American car buyer would buy this over one of those. Much more reliable, mind you, and much more attractive.
That is a fantastic point. I also think that like the Chrysler Concorde is another example of something like that, where it only exists to try to break into.
Wow, total misses, just like all sorts of American misses with much better import competition. Let me roll into
please
my
do. Sorry, I was about to launch into the Chrysler Concorde.
Not. So if this is going to be our last one, I think it's going to be a bit of a doozy. It's not a one-off, and there were multiple made, street legal. So it's not just a concept, but it is the.
What are you about to burn my eyes with?
It is the brainchild of I think he was a surgeon, but it was an LA surgeon who wanted to start a car company. The name of the company is just the guy's last name. It's Uabian. This is an American car, and this is the Puma. And I want you to keep in mind that this thing is way bigger than you probably think it is.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's parked next to what looks like a Mercedes, not R129, is it? I see it in a section. What? This is huge.
It's enormous.
My God, that is awful. Like that is genuinely. Yeah, that's the ugliest car I've ever seen.
I can't even analyze it.
I don't know where do you start.
I can't talk about a single thing. I feel like to be able to talk about how it could look good, it has to be able to be fixed. And I just
you know the alien that raced Anakin in Phantom Menace, Sebulba was his name. That's what this thing looks like. That is crazy, dude. Like that's just nuts. And it's got truck tires. Like those are.
It's got these enormous truck tires. I want you to also understand that it has Volvo headlights and a Volvo interior, and like
I was trying to place where those. Yeah, is that like what is that like a Volvo V60 or something like that? Two door thing.
I believe so. See, because that's more of a boxy car, and those headlights are completely out of. It is completely out of context of what they're originally from, because this is a completely different car. so it's impossible to place those headlights. I want you to guess what ran this thing.
Like what drivetrain?
What is what is the heart of this car?
Okay, is it also, this might be a bit too big of a hint, but is it also the frame that this car's sitting on?
That I don't know, but I don't think so.
I hate to say it, but is it an LS? Is it a GM truck platform?
I mean, I don't know if it's a GM truck platform. There is a Chevy small block in
Oh my
here.
god! I was thinking that it has to be, because like look at how big it is. It's got to be essentially like a Chevy truck under there. A Chevy truck with rear fender flares the same as like a Jaguar XJ220. But sorry, please continue. What ungodly thing is moving those four wheels?
They have placed an
LS7.
LS7?
Why does that thing need to rev to 7,000 RPM, bro?
505 horsepower.
Oh my god.
7,000 RPM. GM small block. Push
Put the
rod
fries in the
V8.
bag, man. That is so bad. What? I don't even know how to. What? That is just nut. I cannot comprehend that. Like, wow. Okay, yeah. I can't. I didn't think I was going to be this surprised tonight, but that is in my life.
It's awesome. I think this is definitely one of the most unique cars I've ever seen, because it looks like if you took like a Honda Beat, and then tried to turn it into a dune buggy. The side almost looks like a boat to me, and then you scaled it way up. You just selected it in Photoshop and dragged it way up. I think the engine's in the front. I'm not.
Oh my god!
Sure.
You know what I just noticed too? These are those parking lines that have two different parking lines in the same line. So like that's how big that vehicle is. Is that it's
very long, right?
Man. Like that's nuts. Wow.
It's insanely long. I would highly recommend you find a picture of someone standing next to it, because I don't even think that picture of it next to that other car even really helps you understand the
I mean, it looks like you have to step up into it, like an old like F550 or something like that.
You absolutely do.
Crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
I bet the visibility is atrocious. Like I bet you have no idea where the car starts and where it stops.
Yeah, because if you look at the seats, it looks like you're inset pretty deeply into the body. So like and you're very far away from the back. You're very far away from the front.
You know, I wonder if what's underneath this car is. I wonder if it's like a GMT 800 pickup truck that had like the quadra-steer or something like that in it.
That's a really good question.
Because I don't, obviously I can't see how many lugs it has, but I am fairly convinced that that's a truck platform underneath there, because that's just too big to be.
I mean, it's enormous, right? It must be. I'm not sure if it is based on another truck platform, if it's a custom frame.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think that obviously it'd be cheaper to use a truck platform, so you don't have to get the frame DOT tested and crash tested. It's probably it probably is based on a truck platform. If it's based on any other platform, it's going to be a truck.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But no truck had the LS7. So
that's true. Yeah, I mean that's nuts, man. That is crazy. Wow. This is the second time that I've been flabbergasted tonight. The first time was you see that white BMW 7 Series that I pulled in. It didn't even show me the mileage on it, because the dash is completely lit up like a Christmas tree because of the service lights, and it says 32,000 miles past due for his most recent service. 32,000 miles. So
just BMW 7 Series things. Every BMW 7 Series ends up with an owner that has put it to this fate.
Especially the E65 Chris Bangle era 7 Series BMW. Like I've never been in one.
Rest in peace.
So
if you ever want an Alpina, you can, from that era, you can buy a 7 Series for dirt cheap, because they have all been racked.
I'm sure. Yeah, and they just disintegrate. Like they just truly disintegrate like nothing I've ever seen before. It is. I mean, it's genuinely incredible.
It is the worst. It is the worst. It is the worst fate of any BMW model is to be a 7 Series and be anything past the first owner.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about 7 Series specifically, but those cars just get fucked up. And executive sedans don't even like the S Class. It's one way or the other. A similarly vintage S Class could be ragged out, or it could be still with its first owner, or the second owner probably takes pretty good care of it or VIPs it. But 7 Series just always end up with someone who don't
it's
give a
nuts,
shit about
man.
it.
Like, it is nuts. I know we've talked about the sentiment before, but it's pretty remarkable how those cars just like turn, just like they just get Thanos, after a few years. And because I'm trying to think. The 7 Series that I see frequently are like the 80s and the 90s models. So either something like the Shorty Sporties or the the really long like ILs, from the early 90s, or like the Tupac like era. But I see 7 Series from there to the mid 2010s E65 era, and then but then those are also rapidly disappearing too. Like, I have absolutely seen recently an E65, but it was devoid of all oil and it wasn't running, and so that's the first one that I've seen technically running in a while, and so it's crazy, man. I think we've covered a lot of ugly vehicles tonight. We've managed to not mention the Cybertruck. I know that probably wasn't intentional on your part. It wasn't intentional on my part either. I don't think they're that ugly. I think it would look better as an SUV than it does as a truck. But
the funny thing about the Cybertruck is I actually didn't.
Yeah.
I was actually very interested in it whenever it came out. I didn't want one or anything, but I thought it was
Right, yeah.
like so crazy looking, and I was excited to see it out on the road. Now that I see them out on the road regularly,
Really?
I probably see one every single day, if not more. At this point, there's a ton of them here in Huntsville. I'm tired of them. I think they're ugly now. I hate it. I'm tired of looking at them. I don't think that they are very. I mean, they're obviously not attractive cars. I don't think there's a ton of people out there who think they're attractive cars. But I think they are. I think they are getting more offensive to me. I think they just look horrible. And I'm trying. And I think I'm separating that opinion from my opinion of that actual vehicle itself. I think I just, in a vacuum, think it's an ugly car now.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that, because I initially had that. I initially had your current reaction to the G80 and G82 M cars with the big scoots, and as I've gotten more used to them, I've come around to them. I still think
I still haven't. I've come around to every single side of them except for the front.
Okay, same. Yeah.
I thought I would eventually like the front because I'm a BMW fan. I like I like pretty much every M3 that's ever been made.
Yeah,
I like how. And I'm very conscious of the fact that whenever the E92 M3 or E90 in general came out, then people thought they were ugly BMWs.
Oh my god, yeah,
I love the E90. I love the E92. I think they look fantastic. But my mind has not been able to be so open to the G82. I think the G82 is still ugly. I can't do it.
Yeah,
that would just like the QX80, that would be the thing that keeps me from buying it, is I don't like how it looks.
Fair, yeah. I think if the G20, the M340i, if it didn't exist, then we would have better feelings towards the G80. But we know how good a modern BMW front end can look.
I separate them entirely. If it didn't exist, I would still think the G80 was ugly.
Fair. That's a good point. I think that's a good one to end it on, man. Yeah, I guess as we come up with more ugly cars, or as one or both of us buy more ugly cars, we'll have more talking points from there.
Well, thank you very much for going through this adventure of slop with me. Thank you for looking at the slop and enjoying the slop and admiring the slop and analyzing the slop with me tonight.
Yeah, it was a good episode of Car Time. But all right, I'll see you later.
Bye.
So we just went through.